Hi, it's Shar with another edition of Insider Secret. And I wanted to share some understanding of how a narcissist comes about creating their reality and the neat process that you're going to learn. I need to silence that. I won't be quiet if I don't. The neat process that you'll learn is that we're actually, as an empath, or even if you're just struggling to deal with a narcissist, is that we're both searching for the same things. We just go about doing it differently. Um, I'm going to use an example from my childhood. I remember growing up and I remember being present when things had happened, and then I would hear my mom retell the version of events. And I remember thinking, that's not exactly quite how that went down, but nonetheless, it was what she was telling. And I was a child and she was an adult, and so people usually believe the first version that they hear. And so I just remember taking that in when that she retold stories. Maybe they were little things like I had stopped to do something, or I had stopped to pick something up, or I stopped to help somebody. When she retold the story, it was never, I was never part of that. It was always her. And it's a grandiose thinking that they subconsciously do. They don't even realize they're doing it. Neither do we, as we suffer some of the cognitive distortions. They also have their own cognizant distortions. I had looked up the definition. I'll look it up real quick for cognitive distortion. And once you understand how they process information, what I find is, when I switch to third person, there's usually pain there. That's a good sign for me. When when your instinct is to get emotional in the middle of a situation, because remember, the energy that comes from emotion, be it good or bad, is what they're looking for. And so, if they can't get it from you, or if they're not feeling good about a situation, they will recreate the reality in their mind until they do. And they actually end up reprogramming themselves. And after they retell the story or retell themselves the same story enough times, if you give them a lie detector test, they will pass it because they completely reprogram themselves. But cognitive distortions are simple ways that our mind convinces us of something that isn't really true. And as a survivor of narcissistic abuse, some of the things, the 15 most common cognitive distortions that I I would perform on myself is filtering. I might take negative details and magnify them and let that sink in and kind of label me in all areas. I might polarize things because my mom would tell me just bad things about myself. So I let that really sink in and take effect on all areas. Might jump to conclusion, might do blaming or play the should have games. There's some emotional reasoning, some global labeling. And the funny thing is that the narcissists do the exact same thing to themselves. They don't even subconsciously understand what they're doing, but this is their subconscious processing also. And so understanding that when we are both faced with a situation, how a narcissist processes subconsciously is that they have to twist a situation until they are the victim. Even when the situation is them abusing other people and that they did bad things to other people, they are going to continue to twist the situation in their head, and they might even retell the story and then get a reaction from you that they didn't care for. So when they retell the story to the next person, they'll twist it a little bit more. And when they finally get the energy and the feed and the reaction that they are looking for, that's the story that will stick, and that's the story that they will reprogram themselves with time and time again. And after they retell themselves this reality about 5 times, that will be their reality. If you had a videotape of the incident and you replayed it, it's so far off from the true reality. Now, if we look up the definition of reality real quick, it's the world or state of things as they actually exist. The difference with a narcissist is that it's it's kind of their state of interpreting it. And one thing as empaths and as surviving victims or thriving people from narcissistic abuse that we learn to understand is that in any situation, there are many different perspectives that we can have. And a great example that I use is I live about 10 miles from a mall. And to get to the mall, there's a lot of different ways to get to the mall. There's probably 20 different ways you can get to the mall. And there's not one right way or one wrong way. They're just all different. And based on what you're needing, you might find a better way to get there. A narcissist only believes in one, and that's their way. And so anything less than that won't allow them the feed and the energy that they're looking for. And so then they're going to find ways to twist it. If they find that you got to the mall before them, based on their way, they'll find ways that they were victimized or stopped at lights or give you some reason why it didn't work out the way that they were superior, if you will. Now, empaths, we do the same thing, except when we're looking for logic behind a lot of the things that happen to us, we are able to take our shoes off and go put another person's shoes on. And we understand that there's more than one way for a situation to be experienced or a reality to sink in. And the more you embrace that, the more you understand, the narcissist way of interpreting a situation is just another of the 360 degrees that you can have in any situations. It's not right or wrong, it's just different than what I'm experiencing. And while in the moment, I may not, especially when you're directly violating them or they're directly coming at you, it's really hard to take your shoes off to go and stand with them in that moment because they create so much clutter and chaos and noise in your world that it is almost impossible to gain perspective in that moment. And so then the goal is just to minimize damage and meaning anything that you say back to them will be interpreted badly because remember, they're looking for ways to twist a story so they can be a victim. Now, the story I'll share with you is my mother, when I was in my early 30s, had gone out and had opened up some credit cards in my name, and I did not know about any of this, nor did I agree to this, or the reason I found out was that this even had happened was that I was going through a divorce, and I needed my credit, and I had a credit card company call me and tell me that I had a past due account on a credit card. Now, I live in one state, my mother's in another state. And I said, I don't have a credit card from this company. And they were like, no, you do. Actually, you've had it for a while and it's just past due like a year. Two of them, actually. And so I called my mom to ask her what this is about. And at first she denied it. And I had thought maybe another family member had done it and wasn't really sure because I had been out of her house for 15 years. And after a couple more days of just pushing through, it wasn't a large amount. It was about $1,500 that was charged and overdue. My mom finally, when they're backed into a corner, she on the phone had said, "Oh, you know what? I do have a Capital One card. I thought it was mine, but now that I look at it, it's yours." And I was like, "Mom, that means that you would have had to apply for a credit card in my name." And once I had her backed into a corner, she finally admitted that she did it and that she was short on money, and that I asked her why, out of all of her children, she chose to do this to me. And she had said that she knew that I would forgive her. Because remember, from my beginning, I had been conditioned as the scapegoat child to not experience love as acceptance, but as rejection. And that anytime I got acceptance from my mother, it's what children are thirsty for. And so I was kind of conditioned to play this role and let bad things happen to me and forgive and come back and forgive. And that was probably the first time that I really woke up to the realization of I'm teaching people how to treat me. This was about 15 years ago. And I want no contact with her. And it actually had stayed that way for about 15 years. Until just recently, this last holiday season, she reached out to me and in a typical narcissistic way, was just trying to bait me to see if she could come back into my life. And I have always allowed her to view me on social media and kind of have a very loose relationship in the sense that she has my information and could reach out to me, and she's kind of not. Through the years, every once in a while, every couple of years, I might get a random message, but other than that, she's kind of kept her place. And this last Christmas, she sent a message, and then she had said, I miss you, but I understand." And so I had replied back, "What is your understanding?" And she said that I'm to make no contact because I messed up your credit. And I had to think about this for a minute, because I was fine with no contact. And is it my ego, or what is it that's wanting to kind of align with her? But I really in the moment had gotten quiet and had hoped that in the 15 years she had done some growth too. And I had said, it wasn't that you had messed with my credit. It was just after this had all became known, she had turned around and told everyone in our family, because remember, people believe the first story they're told most of the time, unless you've been through something like I went through, and then you know that when you hear, if there's a rush for somebody to tell me a story, it always makes me kind of pause and sit back a little bit and be like, why are they sharing this with me, or why are they telling me? For me, it's kind of somebody holding a narcissistic sign, is that, oh, thank you for that clarity, I needed that. But I always know that there's always more than one perspective in a situation, and not to buy into what I'm hearing in the moment. You might but she raced around and made sure that she had told everybody her version of the events, and I actually didn't say much to anybody. I just kept going on with my life. And so to recheck in with her and see where her reality is, was a confirmation to me that the no contact is exactly what it needs to stay as, and that 15 years is a long time. In 15 years, I've raised my own children. I have a better understanding. They've all launched, they're in college, kind of boundaries and where things should end and how to respect them as adults. And so I was really hoping, as empaths do, we always see good in people, that maybe there had been some emotional intelligence and some growth. But with her response back, what I got confirmation of is that she is not changed, and that her reality of events was, now there's actually a few more layers in her story, and why she did things and why she processed them. And she even addressed when she was pregnant with me, and she shot me when she was 9 months pregnant. She went back and addressed some of the issues with that, and that she's the victim now in that also, and that it was a suicide attempt. And back in the 70s, she didn't want to have a baby out of wedlock, and so see how she's found a way to twist that story, and now that she is a victim again, and that she's probably found that that's an acceptable way to tell the story or have it retold, and people give her sympathy when it's not the reality of the incident that happened. My understanding is that she had caught my dad at another girl's place, and she was standing outside. He wouldn't come outside, which is probably very smart of him, because there was a woman with a gun, but that's a different issue. As far as the credit cards, when her reversion of the event now is that she's apologized many times, and that I sent the credit card to her to use, and that as long as she paid it and that my husband didn't find out, that I was okay, but that she didn't pay it and that my husband did find out, and that when I originally called her, that she was asleep, and that she quickly paid it off with the late fees, confessed what they had done to the credit card company and to Steve, because remember, the narcissists know to go and have their story heard first. I didn't even know all of this, by the way. And then with her work, because she worked in the military base, she had a clearance check that she had told them the same story too. So it's actually really interesting now that I can look back and see how many more layers of understanding until they can. And so by the very end of it, she agreed that keeping distance would be best for both of us, which is kind of what I had told her from the beginning, and yet she's still sending messages. So I'm going to end up blocking her because what I know is that the longer a narcissist is around, and remember, actions speak louder than words. And so if you're wondering words, And narcissists are really good at in the moment giving you a lot of words and maybe even saying things that you want to hear, but they're not very good at walking the walk long term. They can for short term, but they can't long term. And this also applies not just in parent-child relationships, but in domestic relationships or romantic relationships, friendships. What I had learned since starting this whole journey about a year and a half ago was that I am a magnet to narcissists because of how deeply I feel and how genuine I feel, and they don't know how to do that, so they want to come alongside and mirror. And now what I know is instead of being this open book that everybody can read and take advantage of, which is my own fault, I'm a lot more hesitant, and I'm a lot more patient on watching someone's actions before I allow them access, because there's a natural comfortableness that happens when I meet a narcissist that wants to let them in, because that is what felt like love to me growing up. And so understanding how a narcissist processes their reality at any given time, even if you're friends, if you are in a romantic relationship, to understand that in a moment, one of my favorite examples, and I'll draw this, hopefully it comes out the way I want it to. We'll see. Yes. Okay. So if I were to make this really big, like 5 feet big, and put it on the ground, and your toes are at the bottom, so your toes are right here, okay? And my toes are right here. And I ask you what you see. You're going to say that you see a 9. And I see a 6. And so a narcissist can't process that. Empaths can. And so they will stand there and they will defend that they see a 9 all day long for the rest of their life till their dying breath. And the only hope that if you're in a situation where you have to work through this with a narcissist, or you have to be in a relationship with a narcissist, the only hope you ever have of kind of getting to some level of normalcy with them is being able to put your ego to the side. Because remember, they're going to react like a little child, because their little child inside of them is screaming for that attention they never got. And you have to take your shoes off and you have to go stand next to them. You have to agree with them. Yep, I see a 9. You're right, I see a 9. And maybe, just maybe, you could say, hey, can you come over here for a minute? And as long as you're building them up, you might be able to get them to come around to your side and be like, hey, when you look down there, what do you see? And they're going to be like, oh, I see a 6. And you could say, so if you were on the other side of that and I'm over here, you see a 9 and I see a 6, who's right? And I did that once to my ex-husband. It was a narcissist, and all he could be was quiet. Because for the very first time in his life, he understood that there's always 2 perspectives, or there could be at least 2 perspectives. There's really many, 360 degrees. There's many, many more. But in that moment, I was able to show him that we can look down and still see the same thing, but we each see something different. And for a moment, and he's not right, because, he's not wrong. Because that's what they want to defend, is I'm not wrong. He's right, he wasn't wrong. Neither am I. And that's splitting, is what that's called for a narcissist. It's black and white, right or wrong. They cannot, there can't be gray. And every once in a while, you'll get an opportunity to maybe show a narcissist that there's gray. Because you know what, the world is a lot more, this is a great picture behind me of black and white. See the Twin Towers back here? But the world's a lot more interesting when we have color and we embrace the colors outside of black and white. And in that 360 degree range is where you find that. And when you are directly facing a narcissist and you're in direct conflict with them, most of the time you're not going to be able to get them to come around to your side and see. Most of the time they're not going to let you come around to their side. They're going to make you stand right across from them and let them know that they're right and that you see it. And if you can do that, or if you have to do that, then you do that. And if you can have somebody help facilitate without becoming part of a triangulation on the sides, without them being in your crosshairs, usually they'll hear that a little bit more. And so I know that I can help facilitate if I've got a narcissist and they're struggling with a lot of conflict, being able to come in and help them see 6 and 9s is what I call that, a little bit different. And then in conversations with them down the road to be able to say, hey, you know what, you see a 6, I see a 9, and they'll be flashback to that moment. So know that when you're dealing with a narcissist, in all situations, they're processing the information the exact same way that empaths do or I do. It's just that their goal is to twist it so they're a victim, and my goal is to gain understanding, because whenever there's a lot of emotion in something, in order for something to go neutral for me and not really affect me deeply, I've got to find the logic behind it and the understanding. Because what happens when we're really emotional is the only thing that can balance that out is more logic. And sometimes, and I'm in sales, when somebody's really logic, I've got to find a way to get a little bit of emotion in there so we can get them back to just a nice even ground, because this is kind of where I like being. Life doesn't keep us there, but this is kind of where I like being. And knowing that a narcissist is looking for ways to twist the story so that they can be a victim, and minimizing damage for me being part of this story is what is most important. So I hope that you gain some understanding today and you realize that it's not you. You're absolutely amazing and perfect as you are, where you are today, and so are they, for that matter. They're just little baby souls. They don't understand. They just don't understand how powerful they could be, and they haven't claimed their right to be here yet. And when we can find the logic behind it and kind of neutralize that emotion, you're able to gain some understanding and hopefully make better decisions in the future. Because when we're making reactive decisions or emotional decisions, that's never a good thing. That can always create a mess. So I hope that you gain some understanding here, because I know that we're all connected. And through us all admitting and realizing that we're all connected, we are all so powerful. And I hope that you found something here to help you, and for you to realize that you are just so loved. And when you start loving yourself first, you'll be able to have a lot to offer the world. So hope this helped you, and I will look forward to talking to you next time. Bye. I gotta figure out how to end these a little better.